Hello again. As you probably have already guessed by now, I'm attorney Robert Flessis for Robbins & Lloyd Career Training Institute. This is part one of course number 4. In this video, we're going to discuss the inspection contingency that's found in the WB11 residential offer to purchase. Let's get started. In an offer to purchase, the terms that are interrelated to the inspection contingency start at line 94 and continue all the way to line 226. They're broken down into different but related sections, namely 1, the real estate condition report, 2, property condition representations, 3, inspections and testing, and 4, the actual inspection contingency. The real estate condition report is an important element of the inspection contingency because the condition report starts the ball rolling on an inspection. Lines 94 to 104 describe the law that requires a seller to provide buyers with a condition report. The condition report applies to properties comprised of 1 to 4 family units. The definition excludes properties that have never been inhabited, properties that are exempt from a real estate transfer fee, and sales by certain court-appointed fiduciaries, like a personal representative who's never occupied the property. Well, let's stop there for a second. Is there a situation where a personal representative of an estate could have occupied the property? Yes, there is, and that would be a situation where an adult child of deceased parents occupied the property many years ago. In that situation, the personal representative is that child. Then the PR would have to prepare a condition report because they lived in the property at some point in time during their life. The condition report must be delivered to a buyer no later than 10 days after acceptance. If a buyer doesn't receive the condition report within 10 days, then the buyer has 2 business days to rescind the contract by delivering what? A written notice of rescission to the seller. So the condition report is the first document that a buyer wants to see to determine not only the condition of the property, but to learn if any defects have been disclosed or references made to a prior condition that has been discovered and resolved. After we review the rules that are cited in the offer regarding the obligation to deliver a property condition report, the next section at lines 105 through 177 are intended to either confirm receipt of a condition report or enter language that the report was not received at the time of submitting an offer. The lines that follow specifically define a defect. After the definition of a defect, lines 178 to 192 define inspections and testing. So before you put an X at box 193 of the offer, which is the actual inspection contingency, a buyer has now been advised of the following: that a real estate condition report is required unless there's an exception, confirmation of receipt or the time period to receive a condition report from the seller, and a lengthy definition of a defect. All of that precedes the inspection contingency. Inspections are a critical part of an offer to purchase. The results can either make or break the deal, right? We also know that over the past couple of years, and even at the time of recording this video, there's a very low supply of affordable housing. So many buyers forego the inspection in an effort to entice the seller to accept their offer over all the others. Here are some things you should think about though. One, your buyer is relying on the seller's condition report and a tour of the property. Next, your buyer is relying on the agent who listed the property. The question is, did the listing agent comply with the Wisconsin statute that requires the disclosure of all material adverse facts that the agent is aware of? When an inspection is not included in the offer, then the buyer and their agent walk through the property looking to confirm the seller's condition report. They're looking at the basement foundation, furnace, air conditioning unit, faucets, toilets, showers to make sure they work properly. They open the circuit breaker box, look at the roof, gutters, and downspouts from the ground. They're most likely not going to enter the attic. They're not going to walk on the roof either. Unless the buyer is knowledgeable, your buyer is foregoing the opportunity to have experts inspect the property. So what if, for example, during the course of the buyer's ownership, they discover a defect that wasn't disclosed by either the seller or the agent? Well, the remedy would be to sue the seller and the agent and try to prove that the seller or the agent were aware of defects but failed to disclose them. Keep in mind that the statute of limitations to sue is 2 years for the agent and 6 years for the seller. So you have to either sue and spend lots of money on a lawyer or accept the defect, correct it, and move on. The inspection contingency is designed to cover 3 types of inspections. 1, a conventional home inspection performed by a professional inspector. Number 2, separate inspections of any specific property components, such as the roof or the foundation, that are identified in the 2 blank lines found at lines 197 to 198. And 3, any follow-up inspections recommended by the home inspector by the language found at lines 200 to 203. Get all that? There's also a provision defining the word testing. An inspection does not allow for any testing. The definition of inspection and testing are found at lines 178 to 192. An inspection is an observation of the property. It doesn't include an appraisal or testing. It does include testing for carbon monoxide, leaking LP or natural gas used as a fuel source, which are authorized in the standard language of the approved offer to purchase form. Now, testing is very different from an inspection. Testing is only authorized if the specific test is named in the inspection contingency. What is the definition of testing? You're taking samples of materials such as soils, water, air, or building materials from the property for laboratory testing or other analysis. If a buyer wants to test, then the seller must allow buyers, inspectors, testers, and appraisers reasonable access upon advance notice to satisfy the testing contingencies. It also authorizes buyers and licensees to be present at all inspections and testing. But remember, a seller's authorization for inspections doesn't authorize testing unless provided for in the offer. If you're going to test, you also have to specify the areas of the property to be tested, the purpose of the test, and any limitations on the buyer's testing, and any other material terms of the contingency. The inspection contingency only authorizes a registered or a licensed Wisconsin home inspector to perform the inspection. It allows for further inspection from a qualified independent inspector or independent qualified third party performing very specified inspections of separate components. The approved offer to purchase allows specific components to be separately inspected, like a swimming pool and associated mechanical parts, a roofing inspection done by a roofer, a basement foundation specialist, and testing for radon or mold. These types of inspections need to be written in at lines 197 to 198 of the offer, or you can't do it. When will the buyer decide to include further inspections to be added to the offer to purchase? Well, after you review the seller's property condition report and after consultation with your buyer, it could be after the tour of the property before writing an offer even. Depending on the condition of the property, you'll want to start to conform your inspection period accordingly. But at times, you may be pressured into shortening the inspection period due to market conditions or exclude the inspection contingency entirely. Before writing the offer, I'm sure that active business licensees discuss the exclusion of the inspection contingency with their buyer. From that discussion, have you determined that your buyer understands the implications of a waiver of the inspection contingency? Does that serve your buyer's interests? What if the buyer that you're working with has never purchased a home before and is not well versed on the components of a home? They're going to rely on your advice based upon your experience selling homes. Now, you're faced with a question from the buyer. After explaining a seller's obligation to provide a condition report and your tour of the property with the buyer, they're going to ask for your opinion. Should our offer include an inspection, Mr. Real Estate Agent? So you're thinking, in today's market, due to the low inventory of homes, your buyer is probably not going to get their offer accepted because some other buyer will exclude the inspection contingency. On the other hand, the seller disclosed step cracking on the basement wall. When you toured the home, the downspouts didn't have any extensions. So from your experience, those cracks are evidence of a potential and very expensive basement repair. Your buyer tells you that they have enough money only to put down 20%, but if the basement needs substantial repairs in the near future, they couldn't swing it. But they want to buy the house. Do you tell them that their options are to make an offer that incorporates the worst case scenario by offering less than the asking price? Do you advise them that they should forget about this house and move on? The buyer is looking for your advice because they never purchased a home before. With all of the considerations that you've discussed, do you think in the back of your mind that you should tell them to put in an offer? Well, there's been a full disclosure of the basement wall cracks to the buyer. Why should you give up a potential commission if your buyer has been warned? Is your conscience telling you to talk them out of the purchase? Think about it. This situation is more probable than not due to the current market conditions. You could submit a lowball offer and see what happens. Maybe other prospective buyers are thinking the same, but you really don't know. Or you could just write an offer that contains an inspection contingency that includes a basement inspection. If you haven't already, you may have been confronted with this situation at some point in your career, and it's probably a good thing because it lends to your experience as an agent. Well, that's it for part 1 of course number 4. I'll see you in part 2.